I am 82 years old, and one morning last April, I caught myself arguing with the sky. I was standing at the kitchen window in my robe, telling the rain it had no business being there. I had waited all week to put my tomatoes in. The flats were sitting by the back door. And there I stood, a grown woman, explaining to a cloud why it was wrong. The rain kept right on coming. It did not care what I had planned or how long I had waited. Then I heard myself, 82 years old, in my own kitchen, negotiating with weather. I laughed at first. Then I sat down at the table, and I did not laugh any more, because I finally understood something I had been paying for since I was about 30. I had spent my whole life fighting things that cannot hear me and will never answer back. Tonight I am going to give you 7 of them, in order. 7 things I stopped fighting. The weather, other people's opinions, being right, and the past, my own body, the telephone that does not ring, and the last one, time itself. I will tell you what each one cost me and what came into this house after I quit. What came in was quiet, not the sad kind you are afraid of, the other kind. People will tell you the final years are the hard ones. Mine are the calmest I have had. Stay with me, honey. The 7th one took me the longest, and it changed the most. Let me tell you who is talking, so you know what these words are worth and what they are not. I am not a doctor. I never took a class in anything after high school, and I am not an expert on you. I kept the books in the office of a lumber yard for 26 years, out on Route 9. Nadine, they called me there. Payroll on Thursdays, invoices the rest of the week. A space heater under the desk and a window that looked out at stacks of pine. My husband Dean passed 11 years ago in February, and this house has been mine since. We had 2 children. Diane is 56 now, out in Ohio, and Bruce is 52. I was a decent mother and a hard wife, and I have had a long time to think about both. Now here is the part I am not proud of, and I want it said early before I start telling you anything. For 50 years, I believed that fighting was the same thing as caring. If I argued with you, it meant I had not given up on you. That is what I told myself. I argued with the news, with prices, with my sister, with the man at the tire place. I argued with Dean about the thermostat for 31 years, and I won most of those. Winning the thermostat did not warm one single evening of my life. And then there was the noise. That is the part nobody warns a young woman about. You can sit alone in a still house with the television off and be in the middle of a fight. I did that for years, rehearsing, answering people who had gone home in 1998. At night, I would win arguments with my mother, and she died when I was 41. That is what I mean when I say I was fighting. Most of it never left my own kitchen. It cost me sleep, and it cost me whole seasons, and I want that said before we start. So, the first thing I stopped fighting is the smallest one, and the best place to begin. The first thing was the weather. It sounds like nothing. I promise you, it is not nothing. I come from people who took weather personally. My father would stand at the door and swear at snow. A rained-out picnic was not bad luck in our house. It was something done to us on purpose. I carried that my whole life. A gray week could take my mood and hold it until Friday. And when I say weather, I mean everything shaped like weather. Traffic, a canceled bus, a long line. Things with no face and no telephone number that will never change because you had a point. Here is what I do now instead, and it took me until 81 years old to learn it. I look out at the rain and I say, "All right then." 2 words, out loud most days. All right then. And I go do the next thing on the list that does not need any sun. My tomatoes went in 3 days later, and they came up the same as they always do. The second thing I stopped fighting is other people's opinions of me. This one had teeth in it. I spent 40 years building a case. That is the only word for it. A case, like a lawyer. My sister-in-law decided I was cold at Dean's funeral because I did not cry where she could see me. I explained myself to that woman for 9 years. At Christmas, on the phone, in my head at night. 9 years of explaining, and she went to her grave thinking what she thought the first afternoon. Nobody has ever changed their mind about you because you explained yourself a little better. People change their minds when they need to, or they never do. Neither one of those is your work. What I say now when it comes up is short. That is not how it was, but I see why it looked so. And then I close my mouth. I do not add the second part. The second part is where the fight lives. It is not that I stopped caring what people think of me. I stopped trying to fix what they think. The third thing is the one my children would tell you about if you ever got them talking. I stopped fighting to be right. Not being right, fighting for it. There is a world between those. I was right about a great many things in this family, and it never bought me one good afternoon. 1994, Thanksgiving. Diane brought home a boy who was wrong for her, and I knew it. I was right. He was gone by spring. But I said it out loud at the table with everybody sitting there. She did not bring another soul home for 6 years after that. 6 years, because I was right. Being right is a cold thing to hold on a holiday. You can be right and eat your pie alone. Now when I know I am right, I make myself wait. Sometimes a day, sometimes a whole season. Most of the time, the thing works itself out, and nobody ever needed me to say it at all. And when it does not work itself out, I say it once, quietly, and I let it lie where it falls. The fourth thing I stopped fighting is the past, and I want to be careful how I say this part. I do not mean I made my peace with it. That is a phrase used by people who have not tried it. I mean I stopped going back there to argue, because that is what I was doing, going back to win. There is a night in 1973 that I have gone back to more than 1,000 times. Dean and I said things in the hallway that neither of us ever took back, and I wanted them back. So I would run it again, and this time I would say it right, and this time he would hear me. He has been gone 11 years. He cannot hear one word I say in that hallway now. The past is the only place where you always get the last word, and the last word is worth nothing there. You can spend 15 years in a hallway like that and come out with nothing but a headache. Now when I catch myself walking back into 1973, I say his name out loud. I say, Dean. And then I say, "It is done." And I get up and put the kettle on. The fifth thing is my own body, and I am going to say this plainly and then move along. I fought my body for about 15 years. I do not mean I looked after it. I mean I argued with it. It would say, "That is enough for today." And I would say, "No, it is not." And I would do the stairs again. I would not touch the railing because touching the railing meant something I did not want to be. I carried 2 bags in from the car in one trip because I had always carried 2 bags. My knees ache when the weather turns. They have for years. That is a fact of my life, not a war. What changed is that I quit treating a slow morning like a personal failing I had to answer for. Now I take the stairs the way my legs want to take them. I hold that rail, and I get where I am going. I am not here to tell you what to do about your health. I am not the one to tell anybody that. I am telling you how it feels to stop arguing with the only body you are ever going to get. The sixth thing is the telephone that does not ring. And some of you know this one already. Bruce goes stretches without calling. 3 weeks. Once it was 5. I know because I counted. I used to sit in this same chair and build the whole conversation before it ever happened. I decided what he would say, what I would say back, and how I would finally make him understand. By the time that boy called, I had already had the fight, and he could hear it in my hello. There is a sound a mother makes on the telephone when she has been counting days. He heard it, and a man who hears that sound waits a little longer before the next call. I taught him that. So I stopped counting. I did not stop wanting him to call. Those are not the same thing. What I do now is call him on a Tuesday for 4 minutes, and I never mention the gap. I ask about his truck. He tells me about his truck. At my age, that is a fine telephone call. He calls more now. I will not tell you it fixed everything, but it fixed the hello. And the seventh thing, the one that took me the longest, is time itself. I fought time the way you fight somebody who is stealing from you, because that is how it felt. I would look at the clock at 9 in the evening and feel robbed. I could grieve a Sunday at noon. After Dean died, I started keeping a running count in my head of what I had left. Not in a frightened way exactly, in an accounting way. I kept the books, remember? And a woman who is counting what is left is never standing in the room she is actually in. I lost a whole summer that way. Diane came for 9 days, and I spent it mourning day 10. That is the thing about fighting time. You lose the day you are in while you are defending it. What I do now is small, and it will not sound like much until you go and try it. I say what day it is, out loud. Tuesday. And then I go ahead and do Tuesday. I also quit saying the words at my age. Every sentence used to start there, and they all ended in no. At my age, why bother? At my age, it is too late. It was only a shorter way of saying I quit. Time has not taken one thing from me that I did not hand over while I was busy arguing. Now let me show you what all this looks like in an ordinary week, because that is where it lives, not on a mountaintop. In a kitchen, on a Wednesday, with the dishes still sitting in the sink. There is a woman down the street from me, Marge, who has opinions about my yard. She has had them for 6 years, and she says them in a voice like she is doing me a kindness. I used to come home, set the dish towel down hard, and tell Dean's empty chair what she said. Last month she started in again about my hedge, and I said, "Well, you might be right." I did not mean it. I have no plans for that hedge. But the whole thing was over in 4 seconds. 4 seconds instead of a ruined afternoon. That is what agreeing costs, and it is cheap. Here is one with more weight to it. Diane and I have a subject we do not agree on. It is about how her father's things got divided, and it has been 8 years of not agreeing. Last spring she brought it up on the phone, and I felt that old heat come up my throat. Every reason I had was lined up and ready, and every single one of them was correct. And I said, "I hear you, and I am not going to go through it again, and I love you." There was a long quiet on that line, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "Okay, Mom," and we talked about her dog for 20 minutes. We have not opened that subject since. I did not win it. I set it down on the floor. In June, I went through a box in the closet that I had been afraid of for 10 years. Letters, mostly. Some from a friend named Ruth that I stopped speaking to in 1988, over nothing at all. Over a remark about my hair at a wedding, if you want the truth of it. The old me would have read those letters to build the case again. Who was right? Who started it? Instead, I read them like a woman reading about 2 tired young mothers who both had too much on them. Ruth is gone now. I could not call her. But I could stop arguing with a dead woman, and I did. And here is the one I have to do over and over, because this one will not stay finished. I argue with myself. At the sink, at 3 in the morning, about a thing I said in 1980. That woman in the mirror gets spoken to worse than I would ever speak to a stranger on a bus. She hears about her hands, her weight, the way she raised her son, and what she should have done. Nobody has ever won an argument with a mirror. The mirror has all the time in the world. If you asked me what I would tell myself at 40 in that lumberyard office, I know the answer. I would say, "Nadine, half of what you are fighting will not remember you by tomorrow morning. The weather will not. The line at the bank will not. That woman at church will not. Save your fight for the 2 or 3 things in your life that can actually hear you." Now, why does any of this work? I have had a great deal of time in this chair to think about it. I believe a fight is a way of feeling in charge of something you were never in charge of. Arguing with the rain feels better than admitting that the rain does exactly as it likes. It is the last handhold. And it is a handhold on nothing at all. When you let go of it, the first days are not peaceful. The first days feel like losing. I want to be truthful about that, because if I promise you it feels good right away, you will quit. It felt like giving up. It felt like I had stopped being a woman with any standards left. Then around the 3rd week, I noticed I had sat in this chair an hour without one word in my head. Not empty, just still. I had not had an hour like that since I was a girl on my mother's porch. That is what I meant at the beginning about the final years being the calm ones. Nothing came to me. Nobody handed me any peace. I simply stopped making so much noise. This past week it rained again, 3 days running, right when I wanted to be outside. I stood at that same window with the same cup, and I did not say one word to the sky. I watched it come down on the hedge that Marge does not care for, and I thought, look at that, 82 years old, and it took me until now to stand still and watch it rain. So here is the one thing I want you to do, my dear, and it is small enough to do before bed. Find one argument you are having with yourself and stop that one today. Only the one, not with your daughter, not with the neighbor. The one running in your head with nobody there. When it starts up tonight, say it out loud. All right then, 2 words. Then put the kettle on. You will have to do it again tomorrow. I still do. But the house gets quieter every time. It is not too late for you. I mean that at 70 and at 80 and at 90 years old. The years ahead of you can be the softest ones you have had, and it does not take much to start. If any of this sounded like your own kitchen, stay with me here. Subscribe, and I will keep talking. Next time, I am going to tell you about the 4 apologies I waited my whole life to hear. 3 of them never came. And what I finally did with the 4th one surprised even me. Good night, sweetheart. Go be quiet for a while.